How's it going, y'all? It's turn-based here. Now, if you're like me, you maybe didn't pull Rin and Matoi back when they ran initially at Chinese New Year, because you were saving for Windvast or Violet or eventually some of the anniversary units. So you just ran with A6 on and you dealt with it. And as we all know, the the fight with A6 on for like the Lilith battle is kind of terrible because the ice damage knocks her down, and it's just total pain to get going. And the performance for A6 on is said to be comparable to an A0 4-star Rin, or maybe even A0 R0, but usually it's just in the context of an A0 4-star Rin is equivalent to an A6 on. But now that we are in the 4.0 era and we have Makoto Yuki, a really strong fire single target DPS, I was thinking maybe we could take the boss in a different direction where we don't have to use A6 on and have that annoying ice weakness, and just use Makoto as a single target DPS for the rest of the fight. Now, I wasn't super sure how well this was going to go, obviously, because the fight has a huge damage reduction for all of the enemies, so that you don't have, or you aren't able to use single target DPSs usually. So like Makoto Yuki would not deal more damage than Rin, for example. However, I found that the results are actually extremely comparable, and in my case, outright better for Makoto Yuki. That's a little bit of a spoiler. So today we're gonna do a test and comparison with Makoto Yuki A6 or Makoto Yuki A0 and on A6. So I also do have R1 on, but it doesn't make a huge damage bonus increase. Really, the A6 on and A0 Makoto, they're actually pretty comparable in damage. So this will be a good test. They're a little bit different in terms of their persona rotations because obviously the Zhao Gonjin super like special skill does not work for On because she doesn't do multi-hits, and likewise the the Throne Purifying Flame skill doesn't really work for Makoto because he doesn't deal sweeper damage. You know, he's only single target, so he doesn't get the burn effect. And you really only care about one of the enemies that you're targeting. So as long as that one has, you know, the burn debuff or any elemental ailment where you can get rid of those cover of night stacks, I think you're going to be end up pretty well. So what we've got for you today is a standard team for Makoto Yuki of the Twins and Windvast, and we're using Anj. The other side is the Akihiko fight again. So for that one, I'm using Miku, the new navigator character, because that side just deals more damage, and you want to use your strongest navigator with whichever side you're going to get the best damage out of. Even if I think Akihiko doesn't pair as well with Miku, I was getting better damage results just because that fight was made for Akihiko. Now, if you had a much higher invested or much lower invested Akihiko, or you didn't have him at all, and you were having to like almost B-side both fights, then yeah, I think Miku here would be great. I mean, obviously she's really strong. But we're gonna go with Anj, assuming a lot of people have, or a lot of people have Akihiko, or at least even if you are gonna use Miku in this fight, we're gonna keep it consistent between On and Makoto. So that's what we're gonna be testing today. In terms of our personas, real quick, this is pretty standard stuff with the Exercising Flames skill for Makoto, and for both of these I'm going to be using the Niansho persona because of its special skill where we can inflict burn just by attacking it with fire damage with the either Disaster of Ward or Rakunda skills. So we'll use Rakunda when we're using Makoto, and we're going to use Disaster Ward when we are using On. Now, I'm going to be using Dionysus, but I'm just going to be using Dionysus for Mediron. And I know, like, last guide I was using Sandalphon with his special skill, and I just felt maybe, like, I did a little bit of testing, and I think I was getting a little bit more consistent results with the Mediron, especially now that the boss fight is critical damage can be hit, like it doesn't resist critical damage. So even if you have like a sub 100% crit rate, like you don't have Revolution, if your crit rate's at like a 90%, and you have Meteoron up, which gives you the crit damage bonus, I think you're still going to get a good enough buff to where it's going to be better than your than your Sandal Fawn's special skill. And we're also, for the onside, I'll go ahead and cover here, we're going to be using Throne with Flaming Chariot and Purifying Flames. And this is very standard for this kind of fight. You know, it inflicts burn, the burn gets rid of the defense down, and that's kind of all we care about. Here I've got the build for the characters. As you can see, they're pretty standard builds. I don't have my Ann all the way invested in terms of leveling her skills, but the skill 3 and highlight are fully maxed out, which are the pretty much only important ones. You're not getting much damage outside of the skill 1, and the skill 1 buffing isn't affected by leveling. I'm not super positive on, but I don't think that is. And also their Mindscape cores are relatively highly invested into. On, again, a little bit less. But as you'll see, the damage numbers aren't a big enough difference to where this is going to be the deciding factor. Just showing you that I don't have like a troll build going on. And then our support skills, or our support units have the exact same build as last week, except they did swap Departure Control for Nativity and Power, because, like I said, Departure Control is better for single target. I don't think it's better. It's definitely not better for multi-target, and I didn't have an extra creation and reconciliation set to throw on, so I just ended up with the Nativity and Power. Again, don't think it matters that much, but as you can see, everything else is pretty standard. One quick thing before we get into it is that I'm going to use the same party composition for both, but for Ann, you could also use, obviously you could use Turbo if you don't use Turbo with Akihiko. That works perfectly fine. But you can also use Chord in place of any one of these. As you can see though, I have a very highly invested Chord. So much so that Ann was actually basically getting the same level of damage as Makoto with Chord. In fact, I had one rotation where I got really lucky with some dodges and I was able to maximize the damage rotation, and I actually got a better score than I did with Makoto, but I don't think that's really fair because most people will not have A4 Chord. I was pulling on the super rerun banner just to get the like rebate stuff, so like like I was building pity for Miku and trying to get the space card and the retrograde card and the gems. And I was just trying to get pity, and I ended up getting 2 whole copies of her in like within 30 pity. So I'm now a proud owner of A4 Chord, so that's kind of cool. But because I have A4 Chord, I think it'd be a little bit of an unfair test to use Chord with Ann. That's just not going to work super well in terms of comparing the scores. So we're not going to do that. We're going to go ahead and just use the same team, mostly same rotation and personas, and we're going to use the same builds on everyone just to make sure that we're consistent. I also want to apologize for any audio issues or background noise that you might hear. The AC is currently out where I'm living, and the fans are on extremely, extremely high. So you might hear a little bit of a buzz in the background. Really sorry about that. I will not turn it off though, because I would be legitimately dying if I didn't have it on. So sorry about that. Alright, let's get into the fight here. So for the Makoto Yuki part of this video, I mean, this is going to be mostly the same stuff that we've seen last week when we did the differences between the stacking theurgies and using them as they come strategies, and we're going to use the stacking part here. Additionally, the modifier this week has damage bonuses the more turns you take with the enemy getting in action. So that means that the more you can stack all of the damage on an extra turn or later turns, the better. So that means that we're going to have the best, we're going to get the best output by just using all of our stuff in the last turn. I'm using Rakundo here and then putting the fire skill on the twins on turn 2 so that I can get the debuff, and then I can use Makoto Yuki's skill 3 to deal max damage without having that pesky little damage reduction modifier. I think Wind Vast can also trigger this, but if you don't have her A1, you wouldn't use that anyways, so I'm doing this kind of like an A0 fight. Another thing is that I'm targeting the main enemy with all of my all of my debuffs and attacks. I know there's like I think this is kind of just like hearsay or like an old wives' tale of you should always target one of the ads because one of the ads has like lower defense, so you get higher damage numbers. I could not, for the life of me, get this to like be factually like confirmed. I just don't think it's true. I got the exact same damage numbers or relatively similar like scores by the end of it by targeting the main boss, by targeting the ad, and I just felt like it was cooler just to target Lilith. So I'm doing that, and yeah, as you can see, this is a very standard fight. The numbers are hilariously lower compared to what we had the other week because the damage reduction modifier, even though I'm having the exact same team, all of the awarenesses and everything. So yeah, this is pretty standard. Not much else to talk about here. I'm gonna see if I can try and remember any interesting points that I had. I do use the Meteoron instead of the Sandalphon skill this time around. Gotta remember to use Cadenza on turn 5, or you're not gonna get the buff. But I think the damage is a little better. I usually live this fight anyways, or not anyways, but regardless of if I use Meteoron or if I use the Sandalphon skill. The Sandalphon skill was a little bit better for sustain, but I think the crit buff was just way better in terms of Dionysus' skill. And having the full 2 turns where you know you're getting that damage buff, yeah, that's good stuff right there. And then again, we're using the Racunda on the main boss, and then we're using the Twins Fire and Ice skill on that last turn so we can apply the debuff before Makoto Yuki gets to deal his big damage, because you want to have that debuff applied or removed before he uses this skill 3, or else this skill 3 has a significant damage reduction. But yeah, other than that, that's just about it. So we'll let the remainder of the fight play out. Don't think the knockdown really does anything. Yeah, I gotta get the damage there, get that critical hit there. Here we go. Alright, now we're going to get into the on part of this fight. And this one is a pretty classic, just 2-turn rotation. We're using that big skill 3 on turn 2, supported by skill 1 the turn before. This first turn, as I'm sure all of you know, it's very annoying because you have to guard because they deal ice damage. And you can't have on knockdown for the second turn, or she will not be able to use her highlight before her turn's up. If that happens without like a Chord A4, she won't be able to use it again. And she wants to use it before her Labian Rose activation anyways, so gotta guard there. You can dodge it, but it's really not, like, you don't get the dodge very often. I mean, I got it maybe once in about maybe 6 or so tries, but I was not bothered to do it. And the damage number is only about, maybe 10 million more. Not 10 million is crazy. 3 million more, I think, is the number I was getting. If you really, really push it, get perfect dodges. You could also get a lot of perfect dodges that you won't have to use a second Meteoron. You can use like a Revolution Rebellion, but this is one of those fights where the crit damage is, you can get crits naturally. You don't have to use the formula. So if you have like 90% crit rate, which I think I was close to 90% or maybe like 85% crit rate with this build, it was a little bit overkill anyways. So didn't feel like I needed to use that. But yeah. Anyways, now that we're kind of getting into the meat and potatoes of the fight here, you can see the damage numbers aren't as good, but we're getting more consistent rounds of damage. For the last turn, I did try to get it to where she can use her highlight before she enters Labian Rose, because she could get an extra passion stack, and that's like maybe 10% more fire damage. So again, not a huge buff, but it is something. Couldn't get it to work. Only way that works is if you dodge the first turn. So that's all in all, that first turn dodge probably contributes to about 2 billion on the first round, 1 million on the second round. Maybe not, because the disaster ward debuffs that you apply, they don't trigger off of that highlight on that first turn. You're really lucky with the here. So you can just die randomly through this fight. It's so annoying. But that debuff where you want to have the damage reductions removed, the Cover of Nights, you want to have those removed before her skill 3, because that's the big damage skill. So using that highlight after the disaster ward, I think is maybe even optimal. Yeah, and she doesn't even deal that much damage with the highlight anyways, so I'm not sure that that's either way. But yeah, if you could get that dodge that first turn, it worked really nicely. Yeah, so just gonna keep going here. I wish we had Marakunda as a skill that you could buy, so you could put it on this persona and not have to use Disaster Chord. Disaster Chord is good, but man, a Marakunda would be awesome on this persona. And then we're gonna use our last highlight. Again, I like to use that the turn before, but still get the damage bonus on this skill 3. Get the turn revert. I'm gonna use that the Anj skill just because why not? It doesn't matter. Again. And there you go. Alright, y'all, that just about does it. As you can see, Makoto clearly is better than Ann, even with A6, even with an R1. Again, there's a chance that Ann with a better build or a team that has investments in different places might out-damage Makoto just a little bit, but I think for most people, it's gonna be Makoto all the way for this fight. And I don't, there's no guarantee that you're gonna have an A6 on. I certainly got super lucky with the standard pulls, and even then I've pulled a lot on the standard banner, so there's a good chance that you still don't have A6 on. And so Makoto Yuki, yeah, he's gonna do really great on this fight. I don't know what the exact numbers are for Rin or the Matoi team, but I don't think it's that far off because my ranking's pretty high, and I don't have a really great B side, I don't think so. Or I guess A side. This is my B side. So regardless, I think that if you're looking for, hey, is it possible to use Makoto Yuki, or do I need to use a sweeper? No, just use your best fire DPS. Doesn't matter who. I think you're gonna do just fine on this fight. Hope y'all enjoyed this guide, and I'll see y'all later.